Do you remember the last time you prayed that prayer that I'm hearing in today's gospel? Increase our faith, or increase my faith. Maybe it came out a different way, like, help me understand. Or could it have been a question? What's going on here? What's happening and why? Can you remember a time when you've prayed that way? Or was there a time where it almost prayed itself in you? It almost exploded out of you because of whatever was going on. Increase my faith. I don't know about you, but when I've prayed that prayer, that's usually been kind of a difficult moment. Maybe I knew that there was something that I needed to do, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to do it. More than once, it's been in a hospital room where I wasn't really sure what was going to happen next. I'll be honest, I can't remember praying that prayer from a joyful space. It's always been a time of difficulty. And as I hear Jesus speak today, I gotta say, I'm not terribly encouraged by what he says. I mean, he might not have meant it this way, but right now I'm hearing it as kind of rebuke. What? If you only had this much faith, you could pull a mulberry tree out. You could move a mountain. But since you're not doing that, I'm guessing you don't have that much faith. Well, thanks a lot, Jesus. Then he follows up with what I can only say to me today is a really unhelpful parable about so-called worthless slaves who only do what they're supposed to do and should not expect to even be thanked for it. Now, I know everyone tells us that slavery was different back then, and it wasn't the same as the crime that was committed in this country, but as far as I'm concerned, it's always terrible, always wrong, always a sin. Hard for me to see anything good in it today. And I hope we all agree here that no one in the household of God is worthless. That no one God has made is worthless. And that anyone who tells someone else that they're worthless is telling a lie. Not helpful today, Jesus. Even more, sometimes I hear people tell this story as a way of explaining maybe why bad things are happening. If you only had more faith, people sometimes say, you wouldn't be poor. In fact, if you had more faith, maybe you'd be rich. Or if you suffered an injury or an illness, your healing is based on how strong your faith is. Or maybe if you had more faith, you wouldn't feel depressed or anxious or compulsive or sad. I've known people who've left faith and left the church because they've been given those kinds of explanations. And friends, as I see it, that's the worst kind of nonsense. My faith has been a resource to me in rough times. It's helped me find God's presence in those times and maybe even discover a gift. Maybe it has for you too. Maybe that's why we gather here. But it's never been helpful to me to blame myself for it as if I could have done something better, even if I might have made a different choice. Sometimes those bad things happen no matter how great your faith is. You know, that idea that if only we had more faith, bad things wouldn't happen is sometimes in the Bible. We've been hearing from Jeremiah over these past several weeks, and our preachers have been trying to lead us into understanding what was going on at that time. How the prophet Jeremiah was trying to get those people to increase their faith, to be faithful to the covenant, so that perhaps Jerusalem could be saved from that big army that was surrounding and threatening to break the walls. But then they did. And they came into the city and they did what invading armies always do. They took the money and the people and left a lot of people bereft. All the prophet could do then was cry. And so we heard that story today in the first reading, and we even prayed it afterwards in the psalm. Did you catch the curse at the end? But you know, the truth is, and with apologies to Jeremiah, Jerusalem was probably going to be destroyed anyway. Babylon was the biggest bully on the block, and their king decided, I want Jerusalem, and I want their people, and I want their money. And so he sent the army, and there wasn't anything they could do about it. It wasn't their fault any more than it's the fault of the everyday people of Syria who are suffering those mad war games. They're victims of other people's bullying. So what is our prayer in these times? When whether because of bad luck or some bullying or brain chemicals that won't stay in balance or bodies that break down, or even when a beloved pastor falls and gets hurt and is never the same. What's our prayer? How do we show our faith? I hope we'll have the courage to pray the kind of prayer that we heard today. To lament and to cry, even to sob to God, to stomp our feet and say, this is not fair. This is not how it's supposed to be. Why won't you do anything? To even sit in silent anger and sadness. That, my friends, is a real prayer. And you know what else it is? It's real faith. Real, true, strong faith. Faith that can move mountains. Faith that can say, this is a terrible thing that's happening. And faith can work in us so that we're not afraid of the bullies anymore and we don't pretend like it's our fault. It's the kind of faith that can tell the truth about the way the world is and it's not how it should be. That can say to God what's going on and can work in us so that we become the kinds of signs of what the world could be. That's real faith. It's the kind of faith that stirred up power in people who had been lied to and told that they were worthless slaves. And they rose up and they weren't slaves anymore. And a few generations later, other people, some of their descendants, were told, you're not really as worthy as you could be because of your skin color or where you come from. And they joined with other people of faith and did what seemed impossible and overthrew the kind of bullying that's in a Jim Crow law and other kinds of legal, at the time, racism and discrimination. It is the faith that can bind us to join us so that God can keep removing that mountain of racism and other kinds of injustice that keeps smushing us down, no matter what our color is, or the language we speak, where we're from, in the neighborhood or the suburb that we live in. That's real faith. And that's the faith that joins us, which doesn't necessarily offer a very good explanation of things, may or may not tell us about God, not an idea, but a relationship with God, a truthful one, and a relationship that we share with one another, a truthful one. One that allows us to tell the whole truth and trust that we know that we are never alone as we do it. It's the kind of faith that doesn't blame people when bad things happen, but comes and walks alongside and says over and over again, we are in this together, and God is with us. That's the kind of faith that grows and increases as we grow and increase in love, connection to each other. And it's been my experience that Jesus was right at least about one thing when it came to this. That is the kind of faith that can do what seemed to be impossible. Even move a mountain.